It's like the most basic joke ever. The number one first comedy 101 joke every kid learns at some point, right, when they're growing up. Why did the chicken cross the road? And the punchline that everybody knows, to get to the other side. It's one of those jokes that works by making you expect something extraordinary. Yeah, why would a chicken cross the road? And the answer turns out to be so obvious it's stupidly funny, right? To get to the other side is so obvious. Oh, that is why everybody crosses a road. There's nothing more complicated, nothing bigger than that. It's just simply chicken wants to cross the road. That's why he does it. So that's it, right? There are times in our lives where we do that. We sort of mentally make things more complicated when the truth is almost hilariously simple and straightforward. And sometimes we find ourselves surprised that things are as straightforward and clear as they really are. So, for example, this might sound like a riff on that classic joke about the chicken and the road. Why does Jesus feed a crowd of hungry people? Because they need food. It's just that simple, right? There's nothing more complicated. It doesn't have to be more elaborate. Jesus feeds hungry people because they're hungry, because they need food. It is no more complicated, no more mysterious or enigmatic than that. Jesus cares about hungry people, so he feeds them. This coming Sunday, we're going to be hearing the story. It's that well-known classic miracle story that probably you've heard in all sorts of ways in different forms. You've heard it in songs and sung it in Sunday school. You've heard it preached on, read it from the Bible. It's the one miracle other than the resurrection that shows up in all four of the Gospels. You may have seen it enacted on a flannel board or performed as a skit. There's a crowd of people, and Jesus had been hoping to get some time away for himself, but he sees them and sees their need, and Matthew, the narrator, says Jesus has compassion on them. And as he's been teaching them, the day's wearing on, and Jesus' disciples want to send these people away, this crowd of thousands of people, and Jesus just turns to them and says, no, you give them something to eat. And Jesus' disciples all say, well, we got nothing. We've got 5 little loaves of bread and 2 little fish, right? They had not planned on catering for a whole town full of people. But Jesus feeds them because it is really just as simple. Jesus cares that everybody gets something to eat. Jesus cares about people who are hungry being fed. Now, what amazes me is it really is that simple. It doesn't even have to be a life or death situation. Nobody's going to die if they get a late dinner. Nobody's going to die of starvation if Jesus says, sorry, all I was offering is free teaching. Off you go get your own dinners. Nobody's going to die from that. This is not like a life or death situation like when Jesus heals somebody who's on the brink of death or resuscitates somebody who had died. This is a convenience miracle in a sense, right? People who are, used to the peasant life are used to maybe we get to eat 1 time a day, or maybe it's pretty meager sustenance. That's what normal life is. So if going after follow Jesus means that your dinner is delayed, everybody sort of assumed that's what was going to happen today. If you went along and followed Jesus, yeah, we probably plan on, eating when we come back, but that's okay. Here's Jesus, though, seeing people who are hungry. And Jesus just cares that people get to eat, that people who are hungry get what they need. It really is as simple as, why did the chicken cross the road? To get to the other side. Why does Jesus feed people? Because they're hungry. No more complicated explanation needs to be given. Because maybe in a bigger sense, Jesus shows us the character of God, and that God always cares that people who are hungry get to eat. In fact, in a sense, what Jesus does, as straightforward and clear as it is, meeting a hungry person, feeding a hungry person, has all these echoes throughout the story of the scriptures of how God keeps acting, right? In this central story of ancient Israel's history, the people have been set free from slavery, crossed the Red Sea, they're in the wilderness, and they start complaining. Oh, now we're hungry. Nobody's given us any food. We should all go back to Egypt because there at least there was food and we knew where our next meal was coming from. And God provides, despite their complaining, despite their lack of trust. God provides manna day by day by day in the wilderness because God is just concerned everybody gets to eat, even people who have a hard time believing, even people who don't trust God very well, even people who have been complaining. Apart from worthiness, apart from question of deserving, God just says everybody gets to eat. That's how it is in the reign of God. This coming Sunday, we're also going to hear these words from the prophet Isaiah, who envisions in God's economy, God just gives good things away for free. And you'll hear the prophet Isaiah say, everybody who's hungry, come, get food to eat without money, without price. Come to the waters, get water as much as you can carry for free. Why would you spend your labor and your money on what doesn't really satisfy when God's giving away sustenance for life over and over and over again? This is how God operates in the world, giving good things away without any worry about who's earned it, who's deserved it, but just you're hungry and Jesus cares. Jesus has compassion that people who are hungry get to eat. It really is that simple. From time to time, I hear religious voices who will say all the miracles are really just about Jesus trying to prove that he's God. And certainly, the miracle stories show Jesus' amazing divine power, but that almost makes it feel like the people around Jesus are just props for him to do magic on so that he ends up being puffed up. But I don't think that's how the story really goes. It's less about Jesus needing to feed his ego or wow the crowds. Maybe it's not to prove that he's God, but maybe to show them what God is really like. That at God's heart, God just cares that everybody who's hungry gets to eat. God just cares that when people have needs, those needs are attended to. And Jesus, who embodies what God is like for us, is going to do the exact same thing. So it's no surprise then that Jesus does this miraculous feeding where everybody gets to eat. And there's 12 baskets left over of remaining leftovers to pass around to everybody else who was hungry that they met along the way. But that Jesus tells stories about that kind of abundance, right? That Jesus will tell a story later on in Matthew about workers who all get paid enough to feed their families at the end of the day, even if they didn't work for a full day's amount of labor. Because in the reign of God, God's concerned everybody gets to eat. Everybody gets to feed their families. To be followers of Jesus is not simply to say we believe that Jesus is God, his miracles prove it. Certainly, we also are convinced Jesus is God in the flesh, and the miracles that Jesus did are evidence and signs for us. But that's not just what these stories are about. It's about seeing how God operates in the universe and to dare to believe what Jesus says, that God's way of being God, God's way of reigning and ruling in the universe is that nobody needs to go hungry, that there's enough, there's abundance for everybody, and that when it comes to everybody gets to eat, that comes without the strings of do I think you're worthy, have you earned it, are you enough like me, are you a member of my social club, are you a member of my church club? The ministries that we do in our congregations that reach out to our wider community intentionally don't come with those kind of strings. When we give money or produce from our church gardens to the local food bank, it's not with a proviso, we'll make sure that only people that we approve of get it. Nope, if you're hungry, you get to eat. When we help provide meals for homeless families in our community with Family Promise, it's without any conditions of, well, we need to see the resumes or the backstories of all the people who will be getting our dinners. Nope, if you're hungry, you get to eat. We do those things because we're convinced that's how God operates in the world. Not just for other people out there, but for you and for me. When we come to the table of communion as well, it comes without an essay test or a moral inquiry first. It comes with simply, are you hungry? Here you are to be fed. Do you find yourself empty? Here, come and be filled. Come find what's good, simply because God cares that everybody in the reign of God gets to eat. So this coming Sunday, join us to hear that well-worn story again, maybe with new ears, so that we'll be people who live out what Jesus says about how God runs the world. That there is abundance where God is, so that everybody gets to eat. And you and I can be people who live and practice that kind of abundance and generosity. That's the conversation this week. See you Sunday.